ruining everyone's good. Hello and welcome to my new live show, Tom's Soapbox, with me, Tom Connors, here on Midnight's Edge After Dark. This program is for me to give my take on things in the world of entertainment, much like Andre does with his editorials on the main channel, as well as interact and take questions from you guys out there watching live, and also give you previews of things to come on Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark, and other goodies when I can. Today I want to start my first show out by talking about the apparent attack on fans by the studios and their lack of respect for the franchises we love and support. Over the past few weeks, there's been this narrative pushed once again against toxic fans, ruining everyone's good time as always. The fallacy here is that there's a new phenomenon and it's wreaking havoc on everything from 2016's Ghostbusters remake to Star Trek Discovery and most recently Star Wars, of course. The media is pushing this straw man argument with very little proof, when proof to the contrary that legitimate gripes by fans are being ignored as they are being lumped in with this idea that a loud, nasty bunch of white middle-aged men are on a racist rampage against the very franchises that you love, and that they always hate anything that isn't white or male within these franchises. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age where people believe this. A lot of people also believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows, too. And even though many people who aren't male or white have the same problems and issues, don't pay any attention to that fact though, because then that would not support the narrative that there is a toxic white male fan base that hates your favorite franchise and is hell-bent on ruining it for you. With the world that we live in, with the connection the internet brings, it's very easy to find yourself in a nest of what you would consider vipers, or in an endless echo chamber. The technology that we have today makes it easier to fake so-called proof or information, or hide any there was in situations by trying to erase it from existence, though we learn over time that doesn't always happen either. The very people who complain about the labeled toxic fan base and their issues with any franchise are usually magnified by the reactions and acceptance of this false narrative pushed by the studios by putting themselves in a safe bubble. Yes, fans can be a fickle bunch and sometimes can have expectations that will never be met. The trove of fan fiction and art out there is more than enough evidence to show that any fan base wants their ideas to be heard, no matter how strange it may be by others' point of view. And that's just the issue here. With all these different points of view and sides, it's the ones on the spectrum generally pegged as SJWs or alt-left ignore legitimate gripes by generalizing and labeling anyone who doesn't blindly follow along or has a knee-jerk reaction to the way a franchise may take an extreme turn or appearing to be pushing or feeding off a specific agenda by calling them racist or basement dwellers or trolls. Their arguments are generalized and ignored, and most in this specific posse immediately treat others the way they are accusing them of acting. The other side they see as what they call it alt-rights, or not real fans, and of course the aforementioned toxic fans. Now there are always a few people who fit the narrative of the other side's middle-aged racist white male. And when I say a few, that's exactly what I mean, because since Ghostbusters through STD and into Star Wars now, I have yet to see more than a true handful of racist or uncalled for comments that were always being used to push those narratives. Now, these alt-left or SJWs take it upon themselves to invoke the racist few on others who don't agree with them when they go on these racist and misogynistic tirades and crusades. There's also the argument that could be made for those who would like to push a specific narrative or agenda could be creating said comments or crusades. In no way do I condone at any time slurs or death threats made upon Leslie Jones, Kelly Marie Tran, or any other filmmakers or directors behind the scenes. This isn't the way to get your message out there, and it needs to be expressed once again that a large majority of those who are critical are not represented by the few who are being portrayed as the majority by some. Then there is the majority of that group I was just talking about that is generally the most misrepresented in my opinion, from everything I see in my endless pursuit of the truth in Hollywood corporate politics and the franchise media that we cover here at Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark. Chances are, if you're listening to me right now, you're probably in that latter group because you found yourself being misrepresented, as we have as well as a channel, and can relate. Now, there's no hiding that this is an editorial and an opinion piece of my own design, so obviously I'm in one of these said groups. I'm trying to be as objective as possible, avoiding any bias, but it is probably evident where I stand personally and in my affiliation with Midnight's Edge. That being said, I always try to base my personal opinion on everything in my life by as much information as I can find. It's almost mind-boggling how in this day and age we live in that it is so easy to get as much information out there about any particular subject you can think of, yet so many read a headline and believe it and live by it. Over the past few weeks, we've been following the Star Wars situation with rumors flying about the anthology films are being put on hold for the most part, Kathleen Kennedy's being fired, they are doing some major restructuring and soul-searching over at Lucasfilm Disney to right the ship and gain back the huge portion of fans that they have lost mostly in the last half year. We have been skeptical of reports as there was a retraction that was veiled as words straight from Disney to another retraction for the retraction. So we can only report what we find, but we always stress that unless it comes directly from a specific person's mouth, to take it with a grain of salt. We at Midnight's Edge could go with all kinds of reports from our insiders all the time that could probably get us some type of traction that would help our channels, but we care more about our integrity than we do going with sensationalized rumor that doesn't have more than one source. We always try to seek out multiple sources on anything we break, which isn't often, but when we do, it generally turns out to be the case. Of course, there's no perfect science to journalism or being a pundit, but I guess the same thing could be said about being a perfect fan. Is there such a thing? And if there is, in whose eyes would you be considered perfect? When it comes to being a consumer, we're always on the watch. If we hear that one of our favorite restaurants has an outbreak of salmonella, we adjust accordingly. And if someone like Bill Cosby or Harvey Weinstein turns out to be the people you didn't think they were, or exactly who you thought they were, we also adjust accordingly. Our tastes, dislikes, and feelings are generally pretty fluid, despite what we want to admit, and are always informed by what information we take in. But what happens when we stop taking information in? There's also the emotional aspect of it, just like love, or a lost love. When a relationship is over, it can be difficult to go to a location that reminds you of that person, or hear the name of the person they theoretically could have left you for. Or more in line what we're talking about here, a song or a movie that you both loved and enjoyed often. Now, it becomes the source of pain and misery. I imagine many of you listening can relate to this feeling, and if you're one of those who feel that toxic man babies need to get over something, or are making too much out of something that is supposed to be about wizards and aliens, or anything that may not be considered real, remember, the feelings attached to those things are real. And all fans should understand that, because it's the same love that causes one group to cling to their love of a franchise like a new lover, overlooking miscomings or possible points of criticism there could be. It blinds them and causes them to act irrationally and hypocritical, all in the name of their love of a franchise, not even taking into consideration how the other side, who now feel nothing but pain and misery when they look back on something because of the way they feel that something they cared about deeply has been totally disrespected, misrepresented, or used in a pawn in some way for someone's personal agenda. I admit, there is just as much animosity and attacking coming from the other side as well. As soon as someone expresses their love for a modern version, they are ganged up upon, and before you know it, there's a pop culture riot going on. The other side needs to understand that nothing you say or show them is going to get them to understand your feelings, because it is simply blind love for them. We all have been there, so everyone needs to understand that. And yes, there is a toxicity in the fan base, but not the way the majority of the media would have you believe, because they are being pressured to push a narrative or picking up on it. Either way, it doesn't matter. What we all need to do is come together and understand that we all love something no matter how we feel about it now. And we have to find some common ground and see truth from both sides and not buy the spin. It's more than evident that the spin has already begun to blame these toxic fans for the Obi-Wan movie that hasn't even been officially announced yet or even officially canceled. And yet, a little digging and you can find that a lot of people involved with all of these projects left before Solo was even released. One side needs to understand that they may love the new movies for reasons you may not understand, or may understand, but those are some of the reasons you dislike it. That's normal, but the finger pointing needs to stop being at each other and at the real people who are to blame for all of this mess, no matter how you see the situation. It's really no secret now where I stand on the issue, but I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Since this is my soapbox, and this is my editorial, I will end with this. If you're on the other side of the argument, please stop buying into the corporate spin. Listen to your fellow fans. Hear them out instead of getting into arguments. Same thing goes for the other side. Try listening to each other's arguments. Try to understand, even if you don't agree. Don't let the corporate jerks get away with doing this, though. I'm not saying you have to take the other side, but don't take the corporation side, because then we all lose, no matter what. All right, so thanks, guys, for listening to my little rant there. Now I'm going to take a little Q&A from you guys. Is there anything out there that you want to ask me about? Let's see here if we got any questions. No, Miss Cummings, it's probably not a word. I probably didn't check on that. I do that sometimes. I like to make up words. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the kind words about the editorial. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of a hiccup there, but we're live now, so thank you so much, Dark Slayer. I appreciate that. And yes, unfortunately, the Star Wars camp has seemed to take the Ghostbusters 2016 approach with this whole thing. They're pulling all the stops out. Miss Cummings happens in your trousers. Yes, it does. It does. Can I loan you $20? No, I cannot. I don't have $20, unfortunately. I had to pay rent. Okay, John August. Will Hollywood ever learn from The Last Jedi and Ghostbusters 2016? I hope they do. The whole point that I was getting to with the editorial is just that. It's like, you guys have seen this all happen before, and you'd think you would have learned, but instead they decided not to. And no, sorry, Santo Dominus, it was because my settings were off and you guys couldn't hear me, so I was talking to myself for a moment or two there. But yeah, so is there any more questions you guys had for me before we go on to the next segment? Let's see here. Is there still a Rian Johnson trilogy? Asked Cyber ZN082. As far as we know, yes. But I wouldn't count on it happening. I really wouldn't. The Last Jedi was such a big, huge mess. I don't see it happening. A dude's thoughts. Dang, and I was going to see episodes 9 with the money. Guess I'll have to skip it now. Okay. John August, do you think MCU will get affected by SJWs thanks to Captain Marvel? Seems like Feige is treading a fine line when it comes to this. We're going to have more powerful women and all this kind of stuff that came out like a week or two ago. I don't know if that was just more or less just him stating the facts. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be this huge SJW thing. I don't want to speak for it until it happens. I want to see Captain Marvel first. Richard Smack. Tom, I'm sorry, but did you watch Cobra Kai, and what's your opinion on it? I feel like Star Wars should take notes from it. Yes, indeed, Richard Smack, I did. And actually, we did a roundtable review with Andre and Rob on the main channel about Cobra Kai. You should check that out to get more of our feelings on it. But I thought it was amazing. I thought it was great, and it's how you got to do it. It's how you should revive a lot of these franchises. Brian Ryle. So you talked about listening. Ideas how getting called a bigot over not liking Lando is difficult. I totally understand. And there's not much you can do about that other than point out that it was never a big thing before. Why now, I guess? I mean, sometimes you just got to pick your battles. I've ran into that kind of thing too. I didn't have an issue with the Lando stuff so much as Jonathan Kasdan coming out and saying it, because if he wouldn't have, I don't know if it would have been such a big deal. Let's see here. Steven Anderson. All of our beloved pop fiction always just been pandering, materialistic cash grab in one way or another. I'm getting used to it. Well, that's true in a way, but it seems like years ago there was a little bit more to it than that. And a lot of times the movies that we love, a lot of what those movies became were out of necessity, not, the fact that they spent a bunch of money on them. It was because somebody was passionate about that project, and that's why that showed through, and that's why it still lives on to this day, like something like Star Wars, because nobody expected Star Wars to be a hit. It was this cheap little sci-fi movie, and at that point, sci-fi adventure films didn't gross a lot of money, and the biggest sci-fi feature at that point besides 2001 might have been Planet of the Apes. So there was no reason for them to believe that Star Wars was going to make any more than $15-20 million at the box office at that time. So, sometimes it's just one of those things where it's hit and miss as far as what's going to click with people. And then now, though, I'd say it's more prevalent now that we have this issue with the just movies in general are just so much, because you can do anything you want with computers nowadays. And really, your budget is almost pointless. The budget more so goes to actors and the amount of special effects and stuff like that. But most of the stuff people can do right on their home computers. So, let's see here. I want to catch up with some of these questions here quick before we go on to the next part. Gino X 1987. Do you think Marvel will ever attempt some fan service for dudes among shirtless Thors and Caps ribbing ads for women? I think Marvel's been pretty well balanced. I mean, yeah, they've been a little guy heavy, but they got the X-Men back though. There's tons of strong female characters in that universe, so I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of them. There's a lot of female characters they haven't got to yet. Captain Marvel's like our first premiere starring Marvel Cinematic Universe woman character, so it's going to be interesting to see how that goes and what kind of doors that opens up. Frankly, I think Black Widow kind of got the shaft in not getting the first female-led MCU movie, but hey, she's had a lot of films, so. Let's see here. Read by Nature. You hear about Mission Impossible directors swearing off Star Wars or comic movies citing toxic fans. I did. And I can understand that to a point, but that's also the narrative that the studios are pushing. So that's more of a play ball question, if you get what I'm saying. Let's see here. Resident Evil remake could be amazing if they go full-on horror, period. Richard Smack? Could be. I didn't mind the first one all that much, but over time it just kind of didn't grow on me very much, and I didn't get into the sequels. I know Andre's a huge fan of the first one, I think. Super Comey asked, did I see the Spider-Verse movie director's Twitter meltdown? No, I didn't yet, but I know some people were talking about it. I haven't got a chance to check that out. I'll try and check that out a little later. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to do a news show here anytime soon. I'm hoping we'll get to do an After Dark. If not, I'll try and get somebody on if Rob's not available. But because there was some other news I wanted to talk about, including Child's Play remake and some other things. So yeah. And I'm not even going to comment on that, Steven Anderson. What did I think of the Resident Evil movie reboot? Has there been any? What do you think? Oh, what do I think about? I haven't heard anything yet other than I heard that they're talking about rebooting it already, before the other one's even barely over with. He went on a pro-Antifa rant. If that's the case, then I don't know if we'll really get into it too much here. Because, yeah, there was an announcement, I guess, made by Broke by Collider just recently that the producers behind it are going to be working on a Child's Play reboot, even though this series is coming out. So that'll be interesting. Hopefully I'll get some info on that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm supposed to be on the Wilk Report here tonight. I'm going to be recording with them. I don't know if that show's going to be up tonight or tomorrow, but I'm sure we will bring that up there too. So be on the lookout for that on his channel. Wilk Report is the name of the channel. So yeah, check them out. I did an interview or I did a roundtable, whatever you want to call it. I think it was like 2 weeks ago with those guys. Wilk. Pretty good show. Those guys are cool. Let's see here. Is Brie Larson charismatic enough to lead the fourth wave of the MCU? Asks Nick W. I don't know. Maybe. It depends on how they utilize her. It's all about how they utilize her. So, I have no issues with female-led anything. It's just the pandering bullshit. It's the grandstanding. It's like, especially with like Star Trek Discovery. You know, it's a show that's always been diverse. That's been a big part of the show. To sit there and grandstand about, you know, having a strong black female lead is kind of pointless, considering Star Trek did have one of the first black leads on television. So you're just, I don't know, you're kind of just stepping on the legacy, if you ask me. So any more quick questions here before we move on to the next portion here, because it's just about time for me to wrap this up. Let's see here. Anything else? Ooh, more Chucky. Well, hopefully then, I don't know what the whole plan is, guys, but yeah, we will definitely fill you in on that the more we know. Chucky versus Annabelle movie when? I don't think that will happen because Annabelle is Warner Brothers, so, and Chucky, of course, is Universal. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining me here, guys. I got one more thing to share with you, and then I'm gonna get going here because we got so much stuff going on, and like I said, I got to talk with the guys on the Wilk Report, so I don't know if it's just going to be Wilk again or if it's going to be both of them. Hey, Mundane Matt, how you doing? Thanks for joining me on my soapbox. This is my first little kind of live solo show, kind of like you do, that I was telling you about that I think it was yesterday. One more question here. Would you like seeing some darker Marvel characters introduced, such as Terror Inc., Ghost Rider, or Man-Thing? Asked Gino X1987. Well, I guess we already had Ghost Rider on S.H.I.E.L.D., but I haven't really watched it in like 2 or 3 years. But yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I am hoping that they do Marvel Dark or something like that with Fox. It would be awesome, even if it's not under the Disney banner or under the Marvel Studios banner per se. If they were to do like with Blade and some of these other darker characters, that you could do really cool R-rated features. You know, maybe Deadpool will kind of be a part of that. So who knows? That would be awesome. But yeah, before I go, guys, we got some awesome interviews coming up here with Adam Marcus, who is the director of Jason Goes to Hell, and also the director of Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Tom McLoughlin, who I'm going to give you a little taste of that interview right now with him. We're going to actually be talking about Sometimes They Come Back, but here you go, guys. I hope you enjoy what you hear. It's just a quick snippet of that interview that's coming to the main channel here real soon, and I'll be right back after this. In 1980, the movie Friday the 13th became the next big horror film to join the likes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween. In 1986, an Emmy-nominated screenwriter, film and television director, actor, and singer with the legendary band The Sloths, Tom McLoughlin, literally brought Jason back to life in Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Tom's first film, One Dark Night, was released in 1982, and he has worked on such shows as Amazing Stories, Friday the 13th the Series, Freddy's Nightmares, and was a creator on the shows They Came from Outer Space and She-Wolf of London. He has appeared in such films as The Black Hole and Critters 2, but most notably as a director, along with the countless shows and movies for television, like the Stephen King story Sometimes They Come Back. As stated in the intro, Tom also wrote and directed what I consider my favorite Friday the 13th film, Jason Lives. In the first of a pair of interviews on the subject and so much more, it is my great pleasure to welcome Mr. McLoughlin to Midnight's Edge to talk to us today.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
What happened with Sometimes They Come Back? Because wasn't it meant to be a theatrical film?
Well, it was meant to kind of be a hybrid from the get-go.
Okay.
Yeah, we were shooting it in scope, widescreen, and at the same time I had to be composing also for TV. So it was kind of maddening because certain shots are so cool in scope and the other just like a box. But that was kind of the deal that Dino had made, is that, he got to sell it as a feature overseas, and CBS got to have it, as a TV movie.
So how did you approach it in your mind, though, knowing it was going to be TV for feature? That sounds like it would just be almost like a psychotic mess in your head, just like trying to figure out how you're going to shoot this thing, even let alone all the other issues you were going through.
Well, it really, all the years that I've done TV movies, I never, ever, ever think of them as TV movies.
Right. Well, that would help,
everybody else does. But I tried very hard to work away from, what the kind of standard way of, shooting them and covering them. And my justification was, look, I watch things on as large a screen as I can at home with the best sound I can possibly, have. And at the end of the day, any director is kind of making it for themselves. What's going to please them ultimately, because they're responsible for it. And you can't say, when somebody says, well, why didn't that work? And go, I don't know, I hated it, but, this is what you wanted. You can't do that. You've got to have a passion about what it is, that you're working on. So I approached it purely from the standpoint that we were doing a widescreen movie, but I had to keep being reminded, and I asked, the script supervisor to remind me when I was setting up shots that, we still looked okay, for the TV cropping, which is much more of a square, where the widescreen obviously, has got that one wonderful length. It
looks so much better in scope, let me say.
Oh yeah, it always does. It's it's closer to the way we see things, with the our vision, and it's always makes things also seem a little bigger than life too when you're seeing it in a movie theater, as opposed to the just the square of what. The 1/66 format that was always what the movies were until the 50s, I guess it was.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys get a chance to listen to our interview coming soon to Midnight's Edge. I'm working on those as we speak, pretty much. I quit working on that to do this, and then I'm going to go back to work on that and a few other things, including Andre's review of Ant-Man and Wasp, which is going to be up, I believe, tomorrow night as soon as he gets a chance to see it. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for our interview. Be sure to check me out on the Wilk Report coming up here. I want to thank you all so much for joining me on my first soapbox. It's been a rocky ride. Hopefully the next one's not so bad. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope to see you all next time.